Hope everybody had a happy holiday and start of the new year. Let's get into the first 4 shoutouts of the year. First, we have What the Force, a great podcast that covers mythology, story themes, interviews, and much more. They focus heavily on the female mythology in relation to the saga, and as well as shipping culture. Next share was for All Remaining Systems, who runs a Star Wars podcast that talks about anything and everything Star Wars. They currently are focusing on reviewing the ever-so-popular Jedi Prince series. He's gone in depth on his current book collection, has shown him and his friends play Star Wars games like Savak, and is even experimenting with a dramatic reading of his own Star Wars fanfiction. Support Fanworks, everyone. The third share is for Wit and Folly, who makes some of my favorite analytical video essays on Star Wars, discussing the redemption for Kylo Ren, a look at femininity in Star Wars, an exploration into Rey's heroine's journey, and the parallels between the sequel trilogy and the 1982 Jim Henson and Frank Oz film, The Dark Crystal. And finally, we have Blue Bantha Milk, another podcast that covers several topics such as diversity in Star Wars, how The Last Jedi changed the fandom for the better, and his opinion on Star Wars for newbies, such as how to view them in what order, and he discusses, in his opinion, the best moments of the saga. Check out all of these great channels and subscribe to them. Now, next up is a great chat with Kyle Katarn, where we discuss Star Wars animation, comics, and the latest rumors. Alright, welcome everyone to the third installment of Positive Star Wars YouTubers, where we chat with said positive influences in the community. And today we're going to be talking to the great Kyle Katarn. Hey, thank you for chatting, Kyle.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
So Kyle, one of the main things that I'm really a big fan of your channel is the reactionary element. Whether that is to fan films or the latest episode of Resistance. So why did you choose to go to a kind of a reaction style element for your channel?
So I launched the channel back in March of 2017. Before that, I was a viewer of reactions. I really liked a lot of different big reactors. I was a fan of the Normies, Blind Wave.
Oh, I love Blind Wave.
Just across the way. Yeah, I know. And the thing that I really loved about them was that I was like, I feel like I could hang out with those guys, you know? Mm-hmm. Didn't really have anyone in my sphere in real life that I could really talk to, nerd out about Star Wars. And I had a pretty good collection, so I figured why not just throw it behind me and start watching. The Rebels was airing at the time. The first video I ever posted to YouTube was a reaction to Twin Suns, Maul versus Obi-Wan. And it kind of took off from there. And I just, watching the other people do it, I saw them having a great time. And I was like, you know what, I could get in on this. This seems like something that I could enjoy doing. And it's, I don't know, my feet just kind of got swept up from under me, and here we are now.
Definitely. You know, sometimes I feel like reaction channels get kind of a bad rep when it comes to just a lot of people's opinions on what they think of reaction channels. And I don't know, I think it's really awesome. For me, whenever I'm showing somebody Star Wars or something that I love, I'm never watching the screen. I'm always watching their reaction to what they're watching. So for me, it's really satisfying to see other people react to things that like I've already seen, and like just curious to see what they think and their thoughts on said material.
It really creates a sense of kinship between you and another person, some stranger on the internet, when you see them getting just as excited about something that you did, you know? It's like, you don't know this person, you've never met this person, but suddenly you have something in common that you both feel very passionately about. And I think that that's a really strong connection that you feel. And what really made me aware of reactions in the first place was the trailer for The Force Awakens.
Yes.
Watching all these grown men start crying, and people freaking out, and all these like adults revert back into a childlike state, and you could just see it in their faces. And that was so fascinating to me, and I felt so connected to all these people around the world because I had the exact same reaction, you know?
Yeah, that was huge for me. Along with that, I have to say all of the Rebels trailers, whenever one would drop, first of all, those trailers are beautifully edited and have some really amazing music accompanied with them.
Oh yeah, Kevin Kiner and Filoni, they know their way around a trailer.
It's so amazing, and just the swell of emotions that a lot of people got for like let's say the season 3 trailer where they introduced Thrawn. I mean, so many people freaked out, and it was wonderful. It was beautiful. I loved that moment.
I remember watching Dash He was brought to tears when he realized that Thrawn was coming out. I remember that reaction going viral. That was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one of the elements, you really feel like you're in the room with that person and just experiencing something that you both love. So what would you say, what's your overall impressions of Rebels? Because for me, I really loved Rebels, and one of the elements that really got me more into it was seeing your reactions to it. I specifically remember being at work all the time, and we're very lax at work. So we always have our phones out and we're watching something. And I would always be like, oh, hey, I want to see if Kyle has put up the newest Rebels reaction and see his thoughts.
Oh, I mean, like, if you've seen the reactions, then you already know that I had an amazing time watching the show. It was really captivating for me, and it really reminded me of the good old days of watching Star Wars for the first time. The Clone Wars, I watched it as it aired, and it was very formative in me finally coming around and deciding that I liked the prequels, and the prequels weren't that bad,
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely in that crowd that at first was kind of shied away from some of the choices that were made, but I was one of the people that was healed with Filoni's attempt to kind of cross that divide, if you know what I'm saying.
No, definitely.
But when Rebels came out, I was already on board. I was super excited to get a show from the same creative team. I knew that there would be a little bit of crossover. I mean, obviously, Ahsoka was a secret. Rex was a secret. We didn't know that was going to happen. And my only regret is that I didn't start filming reactions in season 2 because I fell out of my chair and during the trailer for that. When you hear, "My name is Rex," and then all the guns cocking.
Yeah.
That one got me really good. But Rebels, I really liked it. Overall, I would say that it really fits in. It's proper Star Wars. You've got like all of the archetypes that were in the originals are there. They play out in slightly different ways, which makes it refreshing. The art style needs to be talked about because the whole show just reads like a love letter to Ralph McQuarrie. All of those big the way the choices they made with like the pointy lightsabers, Vader's mask being more angular. It was clearly lifted right from the concept art, and that you can't give enough props for, because that really is what draws me to Star Wars, is that visual language. I think it looks so cool. And retro futuristic, very 50s inspired.
Mm-hmm.
Big old bubble space helmets, laser swords, space wizards. Like it's great.
Definitely. My first video ever that I made on my channel was defending Rebels before it even came out, because already like the second like the first look of Rebels came out, people were already hating on it, and the biggest complaint was the style, and how it looked. And I don't know, I felt like I was really alone where I was saying, hey, yeah, I was like, am I alone in saying like this is like, it's strictly McQuarrie, how can you hate this? It's a love letter, just as you said, it's a love letter to everything McQuarrie. How can you? I don't know, I really loved it. The short lightsabers, they didn't bother me because I knew the whole thing was stylistic.
Exactly.
And Vader looked so badass. I'm sorry, I thought it looked amazing.
Yeah, the Siege of Lothal, that's some of my favorite Vader moments.
Oh, definitely. And those are some great episodes.
It was probably my favorite because it was only recently replaced by the hallway scene from Rogue One, which hadn't come out at the time. So when I saw Siege of Lothal, like, that was it for me. This is prime Vader at the height of his power,
Yeah, definitely. And just in Rebels.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
No,
it's interesting you bring up defending the visual look of Rebels, because same thing definitely is happening with Resistance nowadays. But I remember when the Clone Wars was announced, when the one-shot mini movie was announced, people attacked the visual style of that back then as well. And that's now become one of the most treasured, is probably the most treasured animated series, along with Tartarovsky's Clone Wars series. But yeah, people were uneasy about that too, and then everyone jumped on board once they realized that the quality was there. Like a season and a half into it, it had a huge viewer base. Same thing happened with Rebels. It had a kind of a clunky start, but eventually everyone was on board by the finale. And I would venture to make that same prediction with Resistance. I feel like season 2 is going to have much stronger viewing numbers than season 1 did. I think it's kind of showed its quality. It definitely came out with a stronger start than either Clone Wars or Rebels. If you go back and watch season 1, episode 1 of both of those, it's a little bit janky. They're still figuring it out.
Oh, definitely.
Resistance, they hit the ground running. Say what you will about the choices in the characters and stylistically, but the plot was there, the pacing was there, and it hasn't really changed much. Like, they already knew what they were doing. So I think it's going to be much more successful moving forward.
No, definitely. For Resistance, I definitely give it props for a lot of what it's doing. For me, it's always tough to admit that I have this bias that, if there's not lightsabers in it, I just have a little bit of a harder time connecting with it. And when I say lightsabers, what I really mean is like the Force aspect, the Jedi, kind of a lot of the mythology that goes into it. I just have a bit of a harder time to jump into it. That being said, Resistance has handled mystery in a very good way. Almost every episode has incorporated some kind of new mystery element as to like what's going on. Of course, we know kind of how it's going to end with the First Order and the Starkiller Base, but there's still a lot of things we don't know, like Kaz's father, General Doza. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet going into the second half of the first season, and that's exciting.
I definitely agree, and they've done a really good job of playing up that sense of intrigue. This really does play more like a spy thriller almost than like a war story. It's set in Star Wars, but this is definitely more of the quieter espionage kind of side of things. Kaz is secretly trying to sleuth around and figure out what's going on with the First Order, who are this undefined, looming entity that haven't really been. There's no lights have been cast on them yet for the Resistance. We don't really know what to expect. And speaking about mystery, I think when you're seeing the show through the perspective of Kazuda, who kind of doesn't know anything about anything, everything must seem like kind of a mystery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's one thing I really hope they tackle. One thing I had hope for in Resistance, and I think it's still possible, and I think they're still hinting a lot at it, is that they're really going to build up The Force Awakens and kind of where everything lays in the galaxy in terms of the New Republic, the Resistance. Because I love the sequel trilogy, but I don't know if it did as good of a job setting up where everything is in the galaxy. Do you kind of know what I mean?
Yeah, they could have done a little bit more to establish the world building. And, it's understandable. They only have so much time to give you an entire epic adventure. And Star Wars has always kind of used that as a crutch. They're like, well, we can just sort of tell the story we want to tell and then supplement it with other media down the line and flesh it out laterally after the fact. They've always kind of done that,
Absolutely.
But I agree that more of an effort could have been made because this is the first movie in a trilogy. There needs to be at least a little bit more exposition and world building before we move right into the meat, like the heart of the matter, if you will.
Yeah, and I've heard of like some deleted scenes that could have assisted that, but really, the topic on Resistance, I hope that it kind of delves more into that. I would love it if we get to see, even if we have some references to Bloodline, the novel.
Yes.
Just in regards to like how the First Order got its military presence, how it built and how it grew. Just references to that book. Just establish that the Resistance and the New Republic, they're at odds sometimes, and establish that some of the senators in the New Republic are actually First Order sympathizers. Literally, right. If those three things appear in the show, then I'll say, you know what, this is a good lead into The Force Awakens. You can watch Resistance and then be able to pick up exactly what's happening in the galaxy in The Force Awakens, and that's what I hope from Resistance. That's really what I hope.
I think that is really the big potential that Resistance represents for the sequel trilogy. Is yes, this is the first place. This is where I would definitely start if I wanted to try and flesh it out a little bit. Hopefully, we'll see some of the political landscape and understand like why the disarmament of the New Republic army happened. We get a really good explanation of that on Bloodline, but honestly, not enough people are going to read that. The animated show is a great way to get that information back out to people, at least with small references here and there. I actually had a theory moving forward. I think that Kazuda's father, one of the senators, is going to turn out to be a sympathizer for the First Order.
Yes, and I was actually talking about that on Twitter a few days ago. And yeah, that's something I hope. That'd be a great way to introduce that concept from Bloodline.
I guess we'll have to see what happens. But no, I have high hopes for what's going on. The episodes have been of a very high quality so far. I really think that this could be a way to redeem Captain Phasma's character and flesh it out a little bit more appropriately as well.
Oh, Captain Phasma. Before this Force Awakens, I bought like so much Phasma gear, and I'm like, Phasma's gonna be awesome, guys. And then Force Awakens happens, and then same thing happened in The Last Jedi, where I'm like, I'm gonna keep on buying Phasma gear because it's gonna be amazing.
She's gonna get her redemption, and then nope.
And then I'm just stuck here with like 5 Phasma plushies and an action figure, and like, okay,
Yeah, well, tell it to my limited edition 12-inch Constable Zuvio.
Oh my god. Oh,
Wasn't
Constable
even in the
Zuvio.
damn film, man.
I know. That's so sad.
Maybe
Well,
we'll get a Constable Zuvio episode of Resistance. That would be incredible.
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Man, he shows up on the Colossus trying to track down someone who just came from Jakku.
exactly. Let's just have Resistance be a haven for all these characters that we wish had more screen time, you know?
Will Hood, who turns out he's got like a whole dynasty now.
Well, hey, you know, the animated series have always kind of had that. They've always kind of like, hey, you've always been curious about this one random stranger. Let's, you know, insert them and kind of give them more of a backstory. The Clone Wars, you know, was really big on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and jumping into that segue with the Clone Wars, the next season. Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I could not be more ready, and I resent how long they are making me wait before I get to watch it, quite honestly. Definitely going to be posting reactions. That's probably the next show that I'll be reacting to will be season 7 of the Clone Wars. Right now I'm doing Galaxy of Adventures with Bendu, but we're kind of on hiatus. He's off for the holidays, and so I'm waiting for us to meet back up.
Definitely. Galaxy of Adventures, what do you think of that?
Well, I'm only 4 episodes in, but we can dispel any notion that it's aimed at kids after that Darth Vader episode.
Oh, it was so good.
I love the animation style. It's somewhere in between like a Miyazaki looking thing, and then also like Western, just regular cartoon animation.
Yeah,
it's very stylish, and creative the way that they're doing it. Yeah, I'm all for it, and I love that they're using original snippets of dialogue and audio.
Definitely. Like, I don't know. Again, that was another thing where some people were up in arms about it, but like, why wouldn't you have, you know, just a cool little extra added kind of summary of the original trilogy? What harm does it have other than exposure to kids to just be like, oh wow, that looks really cool. Why don't I check out these movies that, you know, have these amazing elements and these amazing scenes in them?
Not only does it not do any harm, it does a whole lot of good, because there's a lot of kids out there that won't watch movies made before a certain time just because the production values aren't there.
Exactly.
Like, oh, that looks old. That looks grainy. This looks bad. I'm not going to watch it. If it doesn't have if it wasn't filmed in 1080p or 4K, then they're not interested. And so these cartoons are a great way to bring some of the older material back into the spotlight, and kids otherwise, honestly, they wouldn't have the attention span to sit through a movie made in the 80s where everyone's being raised on smartphones and screens nowadays. We just don't have that in us until we have a certain passion for it, and then we sit through it.
No, very true.
But cartoons like this are a really good way of marrying those eras together in a way that kids probably wouldn't be accessible to them otherwise.
Absolutely. And you know, the backlash that's gotten, and the backlash that really almost every animated iteration of Star Wars has gotten, just kind of leads me to think that there's this stigma against animation not being as top quality as live action, which is a shame, because, you know, animation is kind of what got me into Star Wars. As you have reacted, the Clone Wars 2003 series is my Star Wars. That's what got me into this really big world of Star Wars.
It can't be stressed enough, and I'll never get tired of repeating it to people, is that animation is a perfectly valid and respectable form of storytelling. And it's true, they often get criticized by people who, as you say, just straight up don't like animation and think that it's beneath Star Wars or whatever you want. But there's also people that are trying to be supportive of it that I think don't realize that they're not being respectful of animation as a genre either, because there's a lot of people campaigning on Twitter and urging for Dave Filoni to be given the chance to direct a live action Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's this thing that he's being deprived of. And in my opinion, that kind of downplays the relevance of the work that he is doing in animation. It's like,
that's absolutely true.
He would be doing that. The fact that he's doing animation is because he is a master of storytelling through animation. Let the master have his craft. And you're downplaying the importance of what he does do by saying he's being denied a chance to do this live action thing that everyone else has already done. This man is a pioneer. He's not being stuck on the sidelines. He's blazing his own trail right now.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And on the subject of Dave Filoni, you know, I truly do hope he continues and makes Star Wars stories until the end of time, because just some of his stories have been some of my favorite in Star Wars.
It sounds less and less like hyperbole the more I hear it, but I think he's our new George, honestly, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean he was
come down to him.
trained by the master himself, so it's not hyperbole enough to say it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited for what he's going to bring us in the coming years. It's only going to get better and more refined.
Definitely.
I'm down with the space whales. I don't care who knows it. I'm down with the space whales.
Space whales they're amazing. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. Space whales are amazing. So that kind of back on the Clone Wars. Do you have any idea what these new episodes are going to be? Because there's always been talk of, like, you know, are they going to remake some of the comics that were turned into the Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir? Are they going to do Dark Disciple in these episodes again?
We know for certain what several of the episodes will be, and the rest of them are kind of wild cards. So I don't know if you ever watched the unreleased reels that Dave Filoni.
I have.
Okay, so Bad Batch, the Cad Bane, what have you. There are moments in the trailer that was released which line up with those. In fact, I think someone on YouTube actually was able to reconstruct the season 7 trailer based on some of the shots from the unfinished reels. Yeah. So we know that a couple of those episodes have actually just been recreated and finished. So we will definitely be getting, I think it was a 4-episode arc for Bad Batch. And then the Cad Bane showdown with Boba Fett. But then there's an entire 2/3 of a season that we have no idea what to expect. And
that's exciting.
The Siege of Mandalore has been hinted at. I'm really hoping for some sort of a finality that of Maul's storyline, at least for the Clone Wars part of it. Maybe we can see him heading off and getting set up for how we see him show up in Solo.
Yeah, that would be really exciting.
But yeah, anything to do with Closure for Ventress and Quinlan Vos. Dark Disciple was amazing, and
I love Dark Disciple. Really great.
Any kind of reference we can get for that time period or that story would be wonderful. I guess just the thought that you know, a new season is going to appear and we're not going to see Asajj Ventress. That's one thing that I'm like, oh man, I really hope Asajj, you know, gets her time to shine in this new season, even though her story is finished, that's one of the biggest things that I'm like, oh man, so sad. And this is one of the things that's very difficult to sort of like sleuth around in terms of like looking at the production news, because a lot of the voice work was laid down back when the show was originally in production, and they just had it on file. And now they're finishing up the visuals. That's my understanding of what's going on. So they've brought a couple people in here and there to do like pick up voice work, I think. But since most of it was already completed years ago, we can't be certain what they're working on, you know?
Yeah. And that's completely true.
Which I love, because like I said, if there was a spoiler out there, I'd know it already. And the fact that it's not accessible means I'm going to go into this fresh, and I just can't wait.
Definitely. So, with that being said, I think we had a long, good talk about animation. I'm super excited for the future of Star Wars animation. I think it's honestly one of my favorite aspects of Star Wars, and I'm super hyped. I'm hyped to see what comes next, you know?
It's a great time to be a fan. It honestly is. Definitely.
So, changing gears a bit, let's talk about another aspect of your channel that I really enjoy, your comic book reviews. So, I guess right off the bat, what are you currently reading in terms of Star Wars comics?
So, I've actually fallen about 2 or 3 weeks behind. I just started doing a lot of work outside of the channel. My band has started playing shows, and so I'm not in the studio as much to record.
Yeah.
But I just recently finished the second issue of the Han Solo Imperial Cadet by Luke Ross and Jody Houser.
Right, I read the first issue of that. How is that going? The first issue didn't grab me so much.
The writing, it's a bit of a slow burn. It's definitely up there for me in terms of the visuals. I mean, you can't go wrong with Luke Ross. It's just his visual style is incredible.
Yeah.
And, this is the second excellent piece of work that's been put out by this team. They also worked on the Thrawn adaptation of the latest novel.
That's right, and that was great. I really enjoyed that adaptation.
I just finished reading the book, so the story was still fresh in my mind, so I was in a good place to compare and contrast. And the graphic novel was arguably, like, I honestly had a better time reading it, and I think I would recommend that over the book if I was giving someone a choice.
Really? Ooh, that's interesting. I haven't read the book in a very long time, but when I read the comic, I think it visualized a lot of things that I had trouble visualizing, and it was really great for that, I thought.
Yes, definitely. There was a couple sequences where it's all so cerebral in Thrawn's head. He's got these crazy convoluted plans, And that really kind of translates to the page. You're like, well, now I'm confused because I'm not a Chiss genius, and so I don't know what the hell just happened.
Yes, exactly. I mean, now I know like what the whole the Chiss spaceship at the end. I had no idea how that looked like, and now it's like, wow, that's amazing. So
for me, it was there was a sequence on the ship where he does something with a force field and he beams the pirates back and forth, and
that's right. I know what you're talking about.
The hell out of me too. And so seeing it visually represents like, oh, finally I understand what the hell he did. Okay. Yeah,
absolutely. A little off topic in terms of comics. Have you read the sequel to Thrawn?
Thrawn Alliances?
Yes.
I have it. It's sitting on my shelf and it's on my reading list. I'm going to get to it hopefully in the next few weeks here. I'm going to start churning out retroactive book reviews of books that have been coming out. I meant to be on them, but I guess with my workload increasing, I don't read as quick as I'd like. So
no, definitely. And I also don't have all the time to like catch up on a lot of there's a lot of books I haven't read yet. And Alliances is one though I've been actively trying to get through. Not that it's bad in any sense, but I just keep getting busy, you know, something comes up and I'm always like 1/3 of the way of the book, and I hate after like several months and you're busy and you go back to a book and you're like, oh, well, I better restart it. So, you know, that kind of thing always happens.
You have a little Netflix recap.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be
so back on comics though, what out of all of the Marvel comics can you say is your favorite one?
The most recent Darth Vader run by
so amazing.
Carl Soule and Giuseppe Camuncoli, the one that just finished, was incredible. It immediately stands out to me when I think back through all of these latest Marvel releases. The Darth Vader one for sure. Let's see, I really like the Clone Wars Darth Maul that just came out. I'm sorry, Age of Republic Darth Maul.
Age of Republic, yeah, the Age of Republic one, but with Darth Maul was really cool.
Yes, it was fantastic, and I like that it was a subtle continuation of the 2017 Darth Maul one shot that was released.
Yeah, Darth Maul has been really this character that when he appears has really been top quality, I have to say. The stories surrounding him,
and I think he's finally getting his due. You know, he was just sort of like a loving, like, oh yeah, everyone remembers that cool guy from episode 1, and then he showed up in Clone Wars, and ever since then he's really been on the forefront as like a fan favorite. He's been getting a lot of attention. He's getting his own comics now. A cameo in Solo, that was excellent.
Yeah, they know what to do with this character, and I'm really happy that they're exploring him more. So that's amazing.
He's now the second official person to be voiced and bodied by different people. First we had Vader, of course, with that combo of David Prowse and James Earl Jones.
That's right.
And now with Solo, we've finally seen the official combo of Ray Park with Sam Witwer's voice.
Which, if you were to ask me that I would see a Ray Park being Maul again with Sam Witwer's voice, I would think you're crazy. Like before Solo, if you would have told me that.
I'd say whatever you're on, I'll take 2 of them because that sounds.
I know, exactly. And then it happened, and you're like, oh my God.
Maybe I am on whatever it was.
Exactly. It was just one of those moments where, like, wow, like Lucasfilm definitely knows how to make us happy, you know, in terms of like giving us Maul and just how exactly to present him to us. It was amazing. It was so cool.
It reminds me of this. I have felt the exact same way back in the Siege of Lothal when we hear James Earl Jones say Ahsoka Tano for the first time.
Oh my God,
like
that was surreal.
That was huge. Or Ian McDiarmid saying Ezra Bridger in the finale of Rebels.
And Ashoka Tano.
Ashoka, that's right. Ashoka Tano.
Ashoka. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they didn't want to tell Ian to like, hey, exactly. Ian, can you...
Filoni may be like the chief, but he's not going to tell Ian McDiarmid how to say words.
So you're like, hey, you can do that one again? No? Okay, you're good. You're good.
No, it was fine.
You're good. All right, Ian. Yeah, exactly. I love that. Great episode.
Really much an artistic license.
Yep. So on comics again, let's see. Yeah, Darth Vader. The recent Darth Vader run was so amazing, and I just want Charles Soule to continue making great Marvel Star Wars comics. You know.
Yes, he's really got the knack for what makes a story Star Warsy. And he pushes it and is creative without sort of breaking the mold too far, you know, which I think in recent years has been proven can be done.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You can push it a little too far, and then you'll get a little bit of pushback from the fandom. Not saying that's justified in any way, but that's a thing that happens here these days. So
Yeah, no, definitely, and I'm excited for these Age of Republic comics and the Age of Resistance, Age of Rebellion. I think it's going to be really cool to see some of these characters that I don't know if new canon is touched yet. Like Jango Fett, has Jango Fett really been covered much in the new canon?
not in the new canon. No, he had there was Jango Fett Bounty Hunter back in the EU, and then the second one shot with Zam Wesell, and those were really cool. You know, I think Luke Ross actually did the art for those too. I can't remember. But no, in the new release, there hasn't really been so much as a mention of him.
Well, that's really cool because I hope it kind of covers the ongoing question and debate that a lot of fans have if he is Mandalorian or not.
So that's a question that I think we're going to get a straight up answer to in The Mandalorian.
Ooh, really? You think so?
Definitely going to focus on that, because why wouldn't you take an opportunity to finally set that to bed? And if you're going to listen to anyone, you're going to be listening to grizzled old Nick Nolte in a helmet. I can't wait, man. I'm so excited for that show.
Oh yeah, no, that's going to be amazing. I'm if anything, I'm super curious for the fact that Dave Filoni is going to be directing that first episode. Just how many little tidbits are we going to get from the Clone Wars, from Rebels? You know, just to see all that material kind of tied together.
We could.
It's just insane.
I've been giving this a lot of thought. What is he going to do? Because I know that Dave Filoni is going to do something to absolutely wow us, but it won't mean much if you haven't seen the Clone Wars. And I think we're going to get a live-action holographic recording of Duchess Satine, like at some of it. He's going to cast someone to play her, and then they could have like a 70-year-old hologram that they're just playing, you know, as is tradition. Here's Satine's speech from the anniversary of something in a room full of Mandalorians. Just some little nod. And if you're coming into the show fresh, you'll be like, oh, who's this blonde lady on the hologram? But if you're a Clone Wars fan, you'll know immediately who it is.
Yeah, and you know those. Let's see. It was the start of season 4. Those first 2 episodes. Was it Heroes of Mandalore? I think it was Heroes of Mandalore.
I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That whole kind of arc really felt like it was setting up something bigger. So I'm really curious if we're going to see Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan would be amazing. I mean, obviously Sabine is the dream, but I think that's being held in reserve. That's going to be like, if we see any of these Rebels characters come back in, it's going to be like in a season finale, in a big cliffhanger kind of thing. The way they did with Ahsoka, how she entered on Rebels in the last episode of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And while Sabine is amazing, and she really is one of my favorite characters in Rebels. The fact that she stayed on Lothal up until meeting up with Ahsoka at the very end of Rebels, that tells me that she probably isn't going to be as involved in The Mandalorian. But again, it opens up a lot of possibilities. You know, who knows what we're going to see.
We also know from the Bloodline novel that she's not really central to Mandalore. She's not really involved in there because she's off in the galaxy having art exhibitions and meeting.
That's right. I had forgotten about that.
So we know that she has a galactic career, and she never really sort of isolates herself within the culture of Mandalore. She probably checks in from time to time. And I wouldn't imagine that she would be like a sustained character on the show. I would think she'd stop in once in a while to say hi to her mom or something like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you know, that just raises the question to me. That means that journey that Sabine goes with Ahsoka obviously has an end, and then she settles down and becomes this really famous artist throughout the galaxy. So I just really want to know that story, you know?
My headcanon is that she's like 45, she's an artist, and she's totally like low-key married to Ezra. But he hasn't announced that he came back, so he's like living in the shadows.
That would be, yeah. I need to have that story of Ahsoka and Sabine going to find Ezra somehow in some form. I hope it's animated. I hope it's some kind of visual story that we can see. If it's a book,
they set that up, that was the biggest stay tuned they could have possibly given us without saying like the Avengers will return, etc. I'm sure we're gonna get that from Filoni someday.
Absolutely. Do you think it's possible that because right now we are obviously gonna have a third Thrawn book, but
Betrayal, right? That's what it's called.
I think so. I'll need to look it up. I don't remember at the moment. But they keep on emphasizing that this is a series of books rather than a trilogy. So that tells me that there's going to be one after the third Thrawn book. Do you think it could be in collaboration with Dave Filoni, a novel written by Dave Filoni and Timothy Zahn?
Oh my God, I hadn't considered that possibility. Those names together is always intense. That's how we got Thrawn and Rebels in the first place. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we do get a book set after Rebels from those two names. But I would be really hesitant to think that that's how they choose to continue the story, because I think that would be disappointing for a lot of people.
You're right.
Expecting some sort of grand, either animated or live action continuation to the story. If it's suddenly turned into a book or a novel or a comic, people might feel like that's been put on the back burner. Like there's a lot of talk right now about finally getting a continuation of Maul and Kira and Solo storyline in the form of a graphic novel. And as much as I'm just gratified to get any kind of a resolution to the story, I'll feel a little cheated if we don't get a second movie after seeing him in live action, you know? I think they will release a book, don't get me wrong, but I think it's going to come after whatever continuation to the Thrawn Ezra story is.
That's true, and I definitely agree. I just thought that that was something that I noticed in terms of like, oh, they kept on emphasizing that it's a series of novels, which means there's going to be a book after the third Thrawn book. So that's exciting. I don't know what it's going to be, and any kind of collaboration between Timothy Zahn and Dave Filoni is always very exciting. So now we've talked a bit about animation, we talked a bit about comics. I want to know, well, from here on end, we're going to be discussing some rumors that maybe you've heard of out into the Star Wars sphere of leaks and rumors. So if anyone doesn't want to hear any of that, you guys can tune out now. But
spoiler alert.
Yeah, this is the official spoiler alert. I'll put a little thing here, spoiler alert, you know. So yeah, I myself, I'm not on that pulse of like what's the newest leaks, what's the newest speculation, or you know, rumors. And so have you heard of anything?
I've heard a couple things. The main buzz right now is about General Leia at this time, and the way they're going to be including her in the story posthumously.
Very curious, and this is a very touchy subject, I'd say,
yes,
because you know everyone's kind of at the end of their seat trying to think like, how are they going to handle it? Is it going to be very respectful? You know, clearly they've consulted the family, so I'm curious.
Someone who's not satisfied with the choice that they make.
And that's going to be the truth. That's going to be the truth of the matter, no matter what.
But from what I understand, and a lot of this is coming from relatives of Carrie, not from production people, and because they're being kept in the loop as far as how the footage of Carrie is being used, because it's being used with their permission. A lot of additional scenes were filmed for Episode 7, The Force Awakens, involving General Leia in a more of a combat outfit. She's wearing pants. She has light armor on. And there was an entire abandoned storyline that was created, was filmed, and then later cut from the film when they went in a different direction. And a lot of that footage is being repurposed for Episode 9. And
that's interesting.
So we should be seeing not just like a couple shots of her standing around, possibly CGI a la Rogue One, which is kind of what my impression was. Okay, they'll find a way to sort of put her in there. They'll pull a little Paul Walker or something, but it sounds like there's actually going to be fully fledged, complete scenes, possibly involving some action on Carrie Fisher's part. So I think it's going to exceed people's expectations in terms of how much involvement she has in the story.
Yeah, and you know, I've heard of these scenes before in The Force Awakens, because I've heard of the subplot that there was kind of this big political subplot with Leia, and they kind of would have established kind of where the New Republic and the Resistance, kind of where they sit in terms of like, you know, how they view each other. And Corcella, which is one of the characters in that subplot, would have been featured heavily. And she was even in one of the deleted scenes.
Right, you see her. She has a death reaction as Hosnian is blown up, and that's the only time you see her in the film cut, the theater cut of the movie.
Yeah, that's right. And that was one of the few deleted scenes that there was a deleted scene with her involved. So I assume that deleted scene was part of that grander story that we might now get. Correct?
Yes, they're probably going to reuse the sequence and then just cut Corcella from it because she's now dead.
Yeah.
And just reuse it. There's a lot of situation room kind of scenes of Leia sort of leading the nerve center in front of a big table, and then apparently there is at least one actiony sequence that was filmed at the time, and it's obviously it's all rumor and conjecture. We don't know what is confirmed to be used, and some things could have been confirmed and then were later struck from the schedule. But yeah, anyone thinking that the story crawl is going to start off with 3 years after General Leia's death, blah blah blah, is going to be mistaken. We're definitely seeing her on that screen again. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited to say that, you know, the character Leia is going to be in the final story of the Skywalker saga. You know, that I think is extremely important and very pivotal. So even if maybe, you know, she's not utilized in the way that a lot of us would have liked, whatever happens, and I think it's great that she's even a part of that movie at all. So
yes, I mean, what happened is a tragedy. She was definitely taken before her time, and honestly, I'll just be gratified to see her again, you know. And it's gonna be weird, it's gonna be emotional for me, but yeah, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'm so excited for the closing of this trilogy, and then we can stand back and really judge it as a completed piece, you know.
Definitely.
There's a couple other exciting things that are buzzing around right now.
Yes.
Are you familiar with Star Wars Fallen Order?
Yes, so that is the video game that's going to be coming out in 2019, right?
Correct. Yes, and it is. It's supposed to be open world, a la GTA. Mm-hmm. Set in the Star Wars universe, in the time between 3 and 4, commonly known as the Rise of the Galactic Empire era. And the current buzz is that one of the Inquisitors, one of the primary antagonists that's going to chase your character, will be none other than Barriss Offee, fallen Padawan from the Clone Wars.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Which, if true, would make her first canon appearance after being arrested for sedition and treason at the end of the Clone Wars.
This is actually the first I've heard of that rumor, and that's amazing. Now that's like something I really want to happen, because Barriss Offee was that whole Ahsoka arc was just amazing, and getting into the mind of Barriss Offee and getting more of Barriss Offee would be really amazing in the new canon.
Knowing what happens to Master Luminara, which, by the way, was one of my all-time favorite Clone Wars references in Rebels, was the way she was used as a lure for a great big evil Sith anglerfish. Basically, she just turns back into a corpse when the illusion dissipates. Creepy stuff. Very cool. Like, I like that Filoni kind of concentrates on the Sith being more magical, and the Force is more of a magical wizardly thing and less about midi-chlorians and very scientific.
Oh, definitely. You know? And has it been confirmed that the Grand Inquisitor was the one who killed Luminara?
I don't think it's been confirmed that he is the one that killed her, no, but he was definitely the one who devised the plan of using her as a lure.
So then maybe another Inquisitor, a certain Barriss Offee, could have... Is that possible?
It's absolutely possible.
That's dark.
Yeah, that could have been, honestly, I can see that being her final, like, Inquisitor training. Okay, here you go, you got to kill your former Jedi Master, and then you get your little banana sticker, and you're officially an Inquisitor.
That is dark, but that is something that, man, that's exciting to know. That's really exciting to know. Yeah, and I know it's going to have a lot of connection with the Darth Vader run that just ended, right?
Yes, which is set in a very similar time period, and that comic touches on the formation of the Inquisitors.
Yeah, it does, and that was really exciting to see more of. The Inquisitors was a concept that was introduced in Rebels, but I know it has like some Legends history, correct?
Yeah, it does, and there's, you know, it's the sort of thing where some of it is runs parallel with its EU counterpart, but other things they straight up replace, which, you know, that's the whole point of having a separate new canon. They do that.
Yeah.
But a lot of the main beats are very similar. They serve as a sort of a Praetorian guard for the Dark Force users in the galactic government. So for Vader and for the Emperor, but they don't just hang around. They're sent on missions, and they do sort of the grunt work that Vader doesn't deign to do himself, because let's face it, he's pretty grumpy.
Absolutely. On the topic of that new Star Wars video game, I just have to say I'm really excited in general for a new Star Wars video game that isn't necessarily kind of the current first-person shooter that we have in Battlefront 2.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Look, I like Battlefront 2. I don't love it, you know. It's not something that I put a lot of hours into. and the story mode, in my opinion, was good. It had a lot to be desired, in my opinion, though.
I love Battlefront 2. I play it regularly, but I would love it considerably less if I had a second Star Wars game to love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Open world style games, sandbox games, that is my favorite style of game. I loved Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, Skyrim. That's the way I prefer to play. And having that in a Star Wars setting is just that's too attractive to pass up for me. Like I really can't wait to steal some Rodian speeder and then just like jet off down Mos Eisley with that.
Exactly. and you know, anything that's a little different than what we have right now, which is a typical first-person shooter, I would appreciate, because back in the day we used to get a lot of different kinds of Star Wars games. So anything to add into the video game family that we have right now would be much appreciated. Speaking
of video games here, I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to plug I have been campaigning on Twitter. I really would like someone out there to get the ball rolling on a new contemporary pod racing game.
There you go. A la like the Nintendo 64 Phantom Menace pod racer game.
Yeah, it could honestly just be a facelift of Episode 1 Racer. Just bring the graphics up to speed, and that's, I would buy it at full price. That's all you need. With the technology we have available, you can have an infinitely customizable racer, both in terms of the vehicle and the person. You could choose any species you want. There are so many canon planets that have been added, and they're all so visually various that we could have such an amazing game if someone deigns to actually throw that together these days. You could go racing on Mustafar, Canto Bight. You could go to Camino, anywhere in between. I don't know. I could go on and on about it, but I've been pestering every game developer that I can on Twitter, saying, "Hey, so where's my pod racer game? Huh? When are we doing this? Like, come on, Sebulba always wins." So far, it's been slow going, but any opportunity to plug.
Definitely. I mean, that game was my childhood, so I love everything about it. All right, so we've covered kind of two rumors. Are there any other kind of big rumors that are swashing around right now?
Oh yeah, you know what? There actually is. Jason Ward from Making Star Wars posted an article about a week ago. You may have seen this one. Talking about people that were spotted on the set of The Mandalorian during filming.
Okay.
We have IG-88 spotted.
Yes, that's exciting.
With his full body, and I am really excited to see him actually do something.
Now, are you sure it's not a drink dispenser that we see in A New Hope?
It could be a little column A and a little column B. I remember there was a canon. It was not canon, but it was someone's fan story once about how IG-88 was infiltrated that cantina and unscrewed his head and used it for surveillance while looking for
Okay, but we need that story.
And then was inadvertently filled up with some kind of a booze, and it like corroded his circuitry, and he had to send a backup body in to retrieve the head. It was quite amusing.
So now, why don't we have that story in canon? Because clearly that's the ones that the fans need.
There's so many like off the wall stories. Like, do you know about Skippy, the force sensitive droid?
The force sensitive droid, yeah. Is that the same droid that blew itself up, or is that a separate?
He had the bad motivator.
He had the bad motivator.
And then he sensed divergence through the Force, and he was able to know that R2 had been the droid of Anakin, and he knew that he had the knowledge needed to make Luke change the rift in the galaxy, and so he sacrificed himself so that R2 would be bought instead, which is absolutely ridiculous, but it was a moving story.
Definitely. Keep Star Wars weird, guys. Just keep Star Wars weird.
People aren't down with green space milk, but I'll drink it.
Exactly. I mean, you actually can possibly in what is it, Galaxy of Edge? Is that what it's called? The new theme park that's going to be opening up in Disneyland. I'm so.
Will they be serving it in bottles, or is there going to be like a 21 and up area where you go in there?
I don't know. I think there are going to be alcoholic beverages. I think. Don't quote me on that, internet, but that'd be exciting.
Yeah, no. If I get tipsy off of blue milk and like yell at a boffin, I'll call it a wonderful night.
There you go. Exactly. That's all you need. All right, Kyle. So we've been chatting for quite a while. I want to say thank you for coming by and chatting all things Star Wars with me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on here. I've had a great time talking with you.
Definitely. Before we go, is there anything you want to plug? Is there anything you're working on? Anything you just want to say?
I will say, come check out my channel. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but we're going to be rolling out a bunch of new content starting this week. We've got reactions to Galaxy's Adventures coming out. Got a couple more fan films, including Bucketheads. A lot of people have been asking me for that one. Just a whole lot of new stuff coming in for this new year. So hope you come and take a look at it.
All right, exciting. So everyone, thank you for listening. You guys have a nice day. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.